Hello, friends. Good morning and happy Monday, and welcome back to another episode of Elaborations with Skellington Grin. I am Ava, your Gothic Witch Big Sis, and today we're getting a little uncomfortable. But don't worry, as always, we're on this journey together. Today we are talking about shadow work. Not the cute, candlelit, aesthetic kind that looks great on the gram, but the real process of facing yourself. The real process of turning to the parts of you that you tend to avoid, the things that you'd rather not feel, the patterns that you thought you'd healed but keep circling back to, those habits that you keep doing over and over and over again that might even be setting you back. This episode is for those moments when self-growth doesn't feel glamorous, when it feels like you're halfway between who you were and who you're becoming, and it's, well, admittedly a little messy. If you're seated and you can take notes, I highly encourage you to grab a notebook or simply open the Notes app on your mobile device. And if you are listening while commuting, as always, stay safe, obey all traffic laws, and if you're using public transport, obey the public transport laws. Without further ado, let's dive right into today's episode. So first, let's answer this question of what exactly is shadow work? At its heart, shadow work is the practice of exploring and integrating the unconscious parts of ourselves, the pieces that we hide, deny, or repress. Psychologist Carl Jung called it the shadow self, and he believed that facing it was essential to becoming a whole person. The shadow self is where your unfiltered emotions, hidden motives, and unlived potentials lie. But contrary to popular belief, the shadow self isn't purely negative. It's not this bad side of you. It is simply the unseen side. When you think of your shadow, imagine a closet full of things that you have tucked away over the years. Kind of like putting things into a shoebox and then putting it at the top of your closet and then maybe taking it out 10 years later. Some of those memories that are going to be stored in there are going to be painful, and others are simply parts of yourself that you decided weren't acceptable because someone told you they weren't. Your assertiveness, your sensuality, your sexuality, or even your joy. Shadow work means opening that closet and saying, okay, let's finally see what's in here. Now, what shadow work is not is it is not an excuse to wallow in any kind of self-pity. It's not spiritual punishment. And it's also not a trend to perform online. However, the internet has turned shadow work into something that seems pretty, something that we will go on TikTok and buy a journal for. But sometimes it is crying on your kitchen floor at 2 a.m. while eating icing out of a can because you finally admitted something to yourself that you've been running from for years. Sometimes it's crying on the floor of your bathroom when a memory from 10 years ago hits you and you cringe and then you cry about it because it's something that you never fully processed up until now. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it is also incredibly liberating because you can't heal what you refuse to look at. And once you look at it, you give it a voice. You give it a presence, and you allow it to be without trying to manipulate it. So let's now talk about the function of the shadow. The shadow is kind of like the moon. It's always there, even when you can't see it. We know that we can't see the moon during the new moon phase, and then we see it in its full brilliance during the full moon phase, right? The shadow is kind of like that. It holds so many things. Your impulses, your anger, your envy, your judgment. But it can also hold your passion, your creativity, and your intuition. When we suppress these aspects, all of these aspects, they don't disappear. They just go underground. They leak out through things like projection, sarcasm, or resentment, or even jealousy. Let me give you this example. Have you ever met someone who irritates you for no clear reason? Sometimes that might be your shadow saying, hey, that's me. That is a part of you that you haven't accepted yet. Sometimes we might just be irritated by a person because they throw our vibe off. But other times, it could be showing us that there is something about us that we haven't faced yet. Our shadows are mirrors. They reflect the parts of us that we are not ready to claim. And the irony is, when we finally make peace with those parts, they lose their power to control us. They become a little bit like our younger selves, where we still notice parts of ourselves as we get older that are still invigorated by those same things, those childish whimsies, those maybe even same memories that we're still cycling through. But now, instead of seeing our childish selves and running away and saying, oh my God, that was cringy, we're looking at ourselves with compassion and saying, look, you did some stuff. You did some stuff we're still not proud of to this day. But it's okay. You don't have to face the judgment anymore. The goal of shadow work is integration, not destroying the shadow, but befriending it. Not becoming light, but becoming whole. All right, now let's talk about how we can do shadow work. I'm going to give you some practical approaches and a few grounded, accessible ways to begin engaging with your shadow. The first step is journaling. Journaling is one of the most powerful mirrors that you can use for any kind of self-work. But when you're doing shadow work, you can try prompts like this. What emotions do I judge in other people? What makes me jealous or defensive? When was the last time I felt small and why? And when you're journaling, don't censor yourself. Let your shadow speak, even if it's messy or uncomfortable, and you might be writing a few F-bombs in that journal. You're not writing for aesthetics, and you're maybe not even writing to show this to anybody. You're simply writing for honesty. Number 2, dream analysis. Carl Jung believed that dreams were messages from the unconscious. Pay attention to recurring characters, themes, and emotions that might be popping up in your dreams. For instance, if you keep dreaming of being chased, ask yourself, what am I avoiding in my waking life? Because the subconscious loves metaphors, and sometimes your dreams tell you the truth before you're ready to hear it out loud. Number 3, notice your triggers as teachers. When something or someone sets you off, give yourself permission to pause and ask, what is this showing me about myself? The shadow often shows up wearing someone else's face. The coworker you can't stand, they might embody something that you repress, whether it's confidence, boldness, or freedom. Instead of judging, get curious and ask yourself, what is this irritation protecting me from seeing? Number 4, look for the hidden positive. Every shadow trait serves a function. Your fear of being seen as too much may have taught you to be a great listener. Your anger might signal where your boundaries have been crossed. That isn't the shadow trying to ruin your life. It's trying to get your attention. It's your intuition trying to nudge you and say, hey, this is something that we need to really evaluate and reconsider, and something that we may need to strengthen. And number 5, take action with gentleness. Because integration happens through experience. If your shadow hides your voice, practice speaking up. If it hides your creativity, make art with no expectation of perfection, and do it just for you. If it hides your vulnerability, allow yourself to share a truth, even a small one, with someone safe, or even just in your journal by yourself. Healing doesn't require grand gestures. It only asks for consistent courage. And please, as always, do all of this with compassion, because this is tender territory. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's completely okay to seek support from a therapist, a spiritual counselor, or even a shadow work coach. You're not weak for asking for help. You're wise for knowing when to. Now, on a more personal note, shadow work has been a part of my journey for years, and especially over the past 5 years. I have worked with several coaches and guides, and I have filled entire journals exploring my inner patterns. Some of those pages are a little bit scuffed up and tear-stained, some have doodles and maybe some candle wax drops, and others I can barely read without feeling something rise in my chest. But you know what? That's growth. Because every time I revisit those moments, I see progress, even when it's not linear. And for a long time, I thought that healing meant looking perfect, that once I did the work, I'd never fall back into old habits or insecurities again. But the truth is, healing isn't a straight staircase, it's a spiral. Sometimes you circle back, but from a higher level of awareness. And some days I'm still working through things that my younger self struggled with, but now I meet them with grace instead of shame. And I've learned a lot about giving myself forgiveness and gratitude for some of the things that I did in my past. Shadow work has helped me to forgive who I used to be and embrace who I am still becoming. And look at those aspects of myself and say, girl, you're great. You're good. You're healing. And that matters. And if you're somewhere in that in-between space like me, this is your reminder. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are simply becoming more you. Shadow work teaches us that there is no such thing as good or bad emotions, only messages. Anger shows you where your boundaries lie. Sadness shows you where you need care. Envy shows you what you desire, but you don't yet believe that you deserve. When you stop labeling your emotions as wrong and start listening to them, your shadow stops feeling like a monster and starts feeling like an ally. And on the topic of integration, it's less about fixing yourself and more about loving yourself, even the parts that feel unlovable, even the parts that you were told were unlovable, and you took that into your self-concept and said, I am unlovable because of XYZ. That's the real magic of shadow work. It's not about perfection, but it is about presence. And it's about getting real with yourself and being able to even dissect some of those voices that aren't yours and tell them to go F themselves. Now, as we close out, I want to leave all of you with something to ground this conversation. An affirmation, a journal prompt, and an exercise for the week. Our affirmation is this: I am not afraid to meet myself in the dark. I am not afraid to meet myself in the dark. Every part of me deserves understanding, compassion, and love. Every part of me deserves understanding, compassion, and love. Our journal prompt is this: what emotion or pattern keeps resurfacing in my life? And what might it be trying to teach me about myself? What are some habits that I keep going back to that maybe I can tweak or change into something better? And our exercise for the week is this: when you feel triggered, pause and breathe and ask yourself the following questions. What emotion am I feeling right now? When have I felt this before? What might this be revealing about what I still need to heal or accept? You don't need to have the answers right away. Just be willing to listen. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear that their healing doesn't have to look perfect. And don't forget to subscribe to Elaborations with Skellington Grin for more deep dives into the magical, the mindful, and the meaningful. Go ahead and check that description box at the end of this episode for my Linktree link to connect with all things Skellington Grin, including my Instagram, where you can share your reflections and join the conversation. This has been another enlightening episode of Elaborations with Skellington Grin. And as always, thank you for tuning in and sharing this space with me. I'll see you again on Wednesday morning, and on Friday, we'll be diving into the holiday we all know as Halloween and its fascinating origins. I'll see you next time. Bye!